Hi, this is Alex Kiefer, and I am commenting on Pete Mandik's paper, Conscious State Anti-Realism for Consciousness Online 4. Trying to remind myself to speak quietly, because when I go above a certain threshold, the audio gets distorted, so I hope you can all hear me. So I'm going to focus on the issue that Pete stresses most in his video presentation of his paper, which is the question of whether higher-order thought theory is a form of anti-realism about conscious states. So I think really there are maybe a variety of anti-realisms that are relevant here. But to start with anti-realism, as Pete discusses it explicitly in his paper, so Pete's stipulation is that we're going to count as anti-realist any view that denies either the existence or the thought or judgment independence of something. So anti-realism about conscious states, the kind that's discussed in the paper is someone who denies that conscious states exist independently of our thoughts or judgments about them. So I think that's a good intuitive way of putting an anti-realist thesis, and I think that it's also kind of very easy for a view to count as anti-realist. That is, for higher-order thought theory to count as anti-realist on that definition. So it seems to me that on either the relational or the non-relational interpretations of the theory, higher-order thought theory is going to be an anti-realist view on that definition, because according to hot theory, a conscious state is just a state that we think of ourselves as being in. Right, so having a thought about a state is going to be necessary for it to be a conscious state. Now, I think in a way that's not a super interesting form of anti-realism, because it leaves open the possibility, for example, that these conscious states exist independently of being conscious, right, or of our thinking about them. So you might say that the property of being conscious or consciousness itself is thought or judgment dependent, but that the conscious states have an existence apart from that. Now I think Pete argues in his paper that there's a stronger sense in which non-relational hot theory is a form of anti-realism. And there the idea is that all there is to our consciousness is the thoughts or the judgments that we make about it. This is where non-relational hot theory starts to look a little bit more like Dennett's first-person operationalism. And I think the way that I take this point is best, I think, put by looking at an argument Pete gives in his unicorn paper, which is to the effect that once you give up on the idea that there's a representation relation that obtains between a thing that represents and a thing that is represented, it becomes arbitrary to identify any actual thing with the object or the thing that the higher-order representation is about. And so if you think of representation in that way, right, where all that matters really is the representational properties of higher-order states and not any actual relations that obtain between those states and other states, then you might start to think that really all there is to conscious states that's interesting or relevant or important anyway is exhausted by our thoughts or judgments about them. So I think that is sort of a stronger form of anti-realism, and I do think that non-relational hot theory seems to be committed to it. The last couple points I want to make concern how higher thought theory relates to Dan Dennett's first-person operationalism. And the way I take that view, at least, it constitutes sort of an even stronger form of anti-realism about conscious states, because it basically says that the facts about consciousness are settled by the heterophenomenological record, right? The series of reports obtained from a person about what is going on in his or her stream of consciousness. So, and then it says things like, if you probe a person about a certain episode of consciousness at one time, you might get a different answer than you would have if you probed them at a different time, and whichever report the person actually gives is what's going to settle the facts about consciousness. So, in a way, these narratives that we tell ourselves about our conscious mental lives settle all questions about consciousness, and there's no real appearance-reality distinction for consciousness. Now, I think that higher-order thought theory provides or allows for a little bit more independence of consciousness from narratives about consciousness than this. So you might have higher-order thoughts that aren't, in fact, expressed. But as long as, it's a theoretical possibility anyway that there could be a higher-order state that's not expressed, but that nonetheless makes a difference for consciousness. So the heterophenomenological report, according to higher-order thought theory, would be more like, wouldn't be constitutive of the facts about consciousness, but would be evidence for what higher-order thoughts there were, and that would be what matters for consciousness. So whether that's an interesting or an important distinction between these two theories, I think depends on to what degree we can develop a scientific theory of consciousness that in which higher-order thoughts play a key role, that allows us to identify those thoughts or the occurrence of the thoughts apart from their verbal expression. And that's obviously a broader topic, but I think that's one of the interesting issues that's raised by this paper. So maybe that's enough for now. I enjoyed commenting on this paper. I'm looking forward to an interesting discussion at Consciousness Online 4. Thanks.